And finally, welcome to the number one team, the prohibitive favorite in the NBA power rankings, the Brooklyn Nets. The title or bust Brooklyn Nets. There's no moral victories with this team. There's no excuses. Not even injuries or vaccines are allowed. This team must win the championship or this season is a bust. So far, though, it's interesting to note they've lost Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, not to mention D'Angelo Russell, while bringing in KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. Obviously, they're legit. They have three of the best players in the league still in their primes. It's just a little interesting to notice that the fun, young, upstart 2019 Nets team that was the initial draw for KD and Kyrie was completely overhauled, save for Joe Harris. It's kind of like that boat philosophical question. If you have a boat, then change every piece of it out and replace all the parts, the motor, the chassis, the windows, the sails, etc. until no original part of the boat remains. Is it still the same boat or is it a completely new one? And of course, the big elephant in the room is Kyrie Irving. I have no idea what's going to happen with him. These power rankings are based off the assumption that he'll come back at some point in the season. And when they're on the floor, this team is dynamic. The big three only played 202 minutes together in the regular season, but they had 119.6 offensive rating, which would have been first in the league. Obviously, they're great. Obviously, they figured it out. All those questions, oh, there's only one ball on the basketball court. How are three ball dominant players going to work out? They figured it out. But the Brooklyn Nets came in at 48-24 last season, second in the Eastern Conference to the Philadelphia 76ers, and fifth in the 2020 end of the regular season power rankings. Now, those are done by Bleacher Report, so take that as a grain of salt. Obviously, the Nets were the prohibitive favorites to win the title last season, but they did run into injuries, as did every single team in the NBA. But let's talk about the major offseason moves. They lost Jeff Dunkel Green, and that one's going to hurt. He played a pivotal role for them last season. They lost Spencer Dinwiddie, and it's kind of a big loss, not in how it affects the team compared to last season, but I wish they re-signed him, especially with what's going on with Kyrie Irving now. Having a starting caliber ball handler running the point guard while Kyrie figures his shit out would be huge. That's a major spot that they're missing on this team. They also got rid of DeAndre Jordan. They really said, we don't need you. We have Nick Claxton and we have 5 other guys that we're going to sign. Good riddance. We only brought you here because we wanted KD and Kyrie to sign. And lastly, they traded away Landry Shamet. Not too big of a loss. They have a lot of shooters on the team. But they did bring in LaMarcus Aldridge. Again, Patty Mills, Cam Thomas was drafted. James Johnson, DeAndre Bembry, and Paul Millsap are all here on very cheap contracts because they want to win a championship with 3 of the best players in the NBA. But let's move on to the point guard position where they're going to come in at second. And I do have James Harden here as the point guard. I know traditionally he's listed as a shooting guard because of his size, because of what he did back in Houston. He plays the point guard role for this team now, especially with Kyrie Irving out for the foreseeable future. And I'm torn on James Harden, the point guard. For starters, I really like how he took a step back scoring-wise, but became the team facilitator. He set up Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to ball out, and the Nets really needed one of the 3 to make a transition, and Harden fit the mold perfectly. He had a ridiculous 10.8 assists a game last season, which would have placed him second if he qualified and played enough games. He was on track to be a top MVP candidate before he hurt his hamstring. 24, 8, and 11 last season, that's ridiculous numbers. And just this last season alone, his first real foray into the full-time point guard role, he was so much better of a facilitator than he was in Houston. He's slowly morphing into a legitimate point guard. His Houston clone, Kevin Porter Jr., can really learn from the growth that Harden has shown. I don't like how passive he's become at times, though. He effectively removes himself from the offense when he gives up the ball. He'll dump the ball off to one of his co-stars and sit at the hash, waiting for the kick out or slowly jogging back on defense if they put up a shot. I'd like to see a little more activity from him. But he's a good passer. He has a great handle, of course. But at this point of the transition, he plays like the player he is. Not a true point guard, but a guy who can drive and kick and dribble it on the court and then give it to somebody else. He's not really a facilitator, and there's not much of an offensive system here, at least for last season's revolving door of starters. Now, I didn't realize that he's never been a 40% three-point shooter in his career. I could not believe it. He hasn't even shot over 37% from 3 since 2015. And I do attribute a lot of this to the Bradley Beal, Luka Doncic effect, where most of his shots come off the dribble and he makes them even more difficult by stepping it back like 16 feet. Defensively, he's no longer a meme. The James Harden sucks at defense is gone. He's decent when he tries. Still in today's offense-first NBA where he's the primary ball handler, you can't hate it too much that he doesn't give you 100% on defense, especially if he does try in the playoffs when you need him to. And his big fat frame holds up in the post very well, ranked in the 77th percentile for post defense in Brooklyn. The thing is, he's still fat. I blame his weight issues with his injury in the playoffs. NBA players have a specific ideal physical frame to hold up, basically running around 82 games a year to lighten the load on the lower body. They have a very slim, slender, almost swimmers-like frame. When you get big and sometimes even a little fat, you get an injury history like Zion Williamson has right now. Don't get me wrong, the fat Harden memes are hilarious, and he does have a full regular season to get into shape, but that's what the old crew used to do back in the 1980s and 1990s, and those guys' careers ended when they turned 33 years old. This is the new NBA. He has the money, he has the knowledge available. He's earned over $200 million on the court, not to speak about his endorsement deals. And we have guys like LeBron playing like they're 20 years old at age 36. They've shown you how to do it. Please follow the blueprint. I'd really like to see him slim down to around 210, 220 pounds again. Maybe take an offseason seriously for once instead of just going out and partying in Europe. But it's interesting to see what his game is going to be like this upcoming season with more point guard duties on his back, as well as asking to fill the scoring load while Kyrie is quote unquote away. And the rule changes. How is he going to handle that? He's the only guy in the NBA who is able to use facial hair as a competitive advantage to draw fouls. I think the NBA rule changes are going to hurt him a little bit, but he's a good player. He'll figure it out. Hopefully this upcoming season, he'll stay healthy and he'll get himself in shape. Moving on to their free agent pickup, Patty Mills. And while Patty isn't really a point guard, I believe he's going to get more minutes than Javon Carter will because of his shooting ability. His 37.5% three-point percentage last year doesn't tell the whole story. He's a career 39% three-point shooter who will run off screens and catch and shoot threes, especially ready to knock them down when you need a bucket. He was clutch for the Spurs in their championship runs. His 41.3% catch and shoot three percentage last year was great. He's a little old though, 33 years old now. And while you might think, oh, I need to worry about this, he played some of the best basketball of his career when he went into the Olympics, scoring 23 points a game, third in the entire Olympics, best on his team. And he dropped 42 on Luka to win the first ever men's basketball medal in Australian history. And while he's not ever going to be a great defender, he's only 6'1". He will play hard, fight through screens, and use his quickness to his advantage on the defensive end. He's also a really low turnover guy, only a 9.3 turnover percentage last year. Just such a clever pickup for the Brooklyn Nets. He was a huge fan favorite in San Antonio, and I know there's going to be a lot of Spurs fans cheering Patty on and hoping that he and LaMarcus Aldridge get a ring this season. Moving on to point guards 3, and I have Javon Carter here, even though he's a 2 more than a 1. I understand the trade in theory. Landry Shamet is just another poor defending sharpshooter. You could find them relatively easy in today's NBA. Look no further than Patty Mills. Their point guard room is empty after the big 3, hence trotting out the immortal Mike James for large minutes last season. But is Javon Carter the answer? He's a good defender. He's a nice 3-and-D guard. He's just 6'1", so he's not really going to be able to take advantage of many people. He's nice energy off the bench, can pick you up full court if needed. He's a decent catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, and he shot really well in the preseason, maybe earned him some minutes. He just hasn't found his place in the league yet. He's undersized, doesn't have any shot creation, doesn't have any offensive facilitation, doesn't have much ball handling, just another one of those undersized 6-foot shooting guards playing the point guard position. And while he is a defensive guy first, he's still too undersized to guard anyone under 6'4". He's basically one half of Patrick Beverley minus the antic. And I'm just not a fan of the trade overall, but they did get Day'Ron Sharpe out of it as well. There's been worse trades made in history. But let's move on to the shooting guard position where they're going to come in at 4th with the idea that Kyrie's coming back. Honestly, I don't have the slightest clue what Kyrie is going to do this upcoming season. For now, I'm approaching the Kyrie situation like we did with Ben Simmons. There will be all this drama, all these interviews, and all these talking heads are going to say, oh my God, they need to trade away this player immediately. And then at some point in the season, Kyrie Irving will come back and the Nets will go on a run. And I don't know how, and I don't know why, but Kyrie Irving is the leader of the Brooklyn Nets. He told KD to go to Brooklyn, and he did. He told Harden to be the point guard, and he's going to be the shooting guard. And they did it. Now, I love everything about Kyrie Irving, the player. His shot, his handle, his craftiness. There isn't anyone that's ever existed like him. He played so well as an off-ball guard last season, freed up to score once James Harden took over the ball handling duties. We always talk about KD's toes being an inch away from beating the Bucks. The Nets were one big Giannis Pachulia foot away from being under Kyrie not getting hurt, and they had no doubt that the Nets were going to beat the Bucks as well last season. He was ridiculous last year. 27 points a game, 5 rebounds, 6 assists on 50, 40, 92 shooting splits. Shot 54% from mid. Don't even talk about his sweet handle and his incredible finishing. He's a legit all-star, a legit all-NBA player every single year. And I know he does his wild shit. He'll disappear during the season to support unity and equality, supposedly. He'll ask out of Cleveland because he doesn't like LeBron James and then promises to re-sign with the Boston Celtics, then reneges on that offer the next year to go sign in Brooklyn. And now he's ready to give up however long of this year because he refuses to get the vaccine. This is just how Kyrie is. You have to take the good with the bad, the superstar generational talent with the, let's call it, questionable decision-making. Now, the Nets are doing everything they can to get him back full time every single game. They refuse to allow him to practice with the team and play in only away games. They're dangling his $186 million contract extension over his head. And the unfortunate truth is nobody knows what Kyrie Irving will do. Not even Kyrie himself. He's the type of guy to miss out on a $200 million payday and not blink an eye. But hey, this season is finally interesting again. There's no longer a foregone conclusion that the NBA Finals are going to be Lakers versus the Nets. Moving on to the small forward position with Joe Harris coming in at the 18th ranked small forward. And I always talk about this, but no three-pointer is the same. And the really good shooters make their shot when their team needs them to stop a run by the other team, to take a lead late into the fourth quarter, overtime, etc. And Joe Harris, best three-point percentage in the league, Harris, Joe 2019 three-point contest champion Harris, came up tiny in the Bucks series, absolutely disappeared when they needed him most. When Kyrie went out with injury and James Harden was hopping on one leg, he went 7 for 11, 5 of 9 from 3 in game 1. Good game for him. Game 2, he went 5 of 12, 3 of 7. Game 3, he went 1 for 11, 1 for 7. Yikes. Game 4, he went 3 of 8, 2 of 6 from 3. Game 5, he went 2 for 11, 1 for 7 from 3. Terrible. Game 6, he went 4 of 9, 1 from 4 from 3. Not great. And game 7, 3 of 10, 3 for 9 from 3. Just not quite good enough from the quote-unquote best three-point shooter in the league. He's the ultimate shot maker when it doesn't matter. If it's the preseason, if it's game 65 in the regular season, Joe Harris can get you buckets. But at this point in his career, last season and 2 years ago when he was breaking up shots with JJ Redick, he's going to need a Pat Connaughton-esque meteoric rise in the playoffs where he D's up other guys and he hits clutch buckets. Otherwise, he's getting traded away for KCP. Now, I believe in Joe Harris. He's a tough guy. He was out of the NBA in 2016 and fought his way back, and I'm really hoping he bounces back this season. He's a historically good shooter in the regular season. He's a 51.5% catch and shoot three-point shooter last year, a full 1.7% higher than the second place Marcus Morris at 49.8, and he's not as bad of a defender as you think. Just, Joe, can you give us something in the playoffs? We want you to. We need you to. Moving on to the power forward ranking where they're coming in first. Where they're coming in the entire NBA at first. Kevin bleepin' Durant, the best player in the NBA. MVP candidate this season, tied for the third best odds, an assassin from anywhere on the court. A lot of people go, oh, he's a mid-range assassin. Oh, he's a great finisher. Kevin Durant is an assassin from anywhere. Anytime he has the ball, once he crosses the half-court line, look out. He's clutch. He has no issues pulling up in your face. If you're LeBron James, if you're PJ Tucker, he will drain it on you. He'll play all 48 minutes of a playoff game because fuck you. He's the ultimate defensive nightmare, a 7-foot-tall shot blocker with criminally underrated defense. He's the ultimate PR nightmare. While he's not roasting defenses on the court, he's roasting the haters on Twitter. And he looks like he never got hurt. He came back almost better than before. He's got to be the poster child for future player who tears their Achilles without missing a beat when they return. And the 1-inch toe on the line away from beating the eventual champs in the Olympics put the team on his back performance where he was the best player in the world, cemented Kevin Durant as the best player in the world right now. Also because LeBron is like a billion years old and doesn't play defense. But this dude saved America. Put that into some fucking context. Now moving on to the center position, naturally Kevin Durant will play the point guard, point center, whatever you want on this fluid roster. But just for who they have here right now, I'm putting them at 22nd. I believe Blake Griffin is going to be the starter. He's one of the many power forwards they have starting at center for this Nets team, but he was very impressive last year at the small ball 5. He turned himself into an effort and glue guy for the team, diving after loose balls. He's surprisingly accepting of being a vet minimum role player, fallen from his all-star heights just a few years ago. And just because he doesn't drop 20 on you a night doesn't mean he doesn't play well. He D'd up Giannis very well in their series. Probably inspired Monty Williams to not build the wall and let DeAndre Ayton go one-on-one, much to their detriment. Now, he's still not a great three-point shooter, but he's serviceable at these days, 34.1%. He's still a decent passer, and he even dunks the ball again. Take that, Detroit. But he will basically run dribble handoffs and either dive to the rim or drift out to the three-point line this season. Injuries have just sapped him of his physical talent, and he never developed his game beyond flying through the air. He's going to need to continue to improve his three-point shot. He's going to have to continue to play his role, and he's only 32. I can't believe how young he is because he looks like an old man out there. But moving on to their younger guy, Nicholas Claxton, who was a breakout for them last year after they had to trade away Jarrett Allen, and it felt like out with the slightly older, in with the new, because Nick Claxton did the exact same thing, if not better. Now, I'm not sure why Steve Nash didn't like playing Nick Claxton heavy minutes last season. I know he does struggle with strength. He's still a pretty scrawny kid. He's vulnerable to offensive rebounding by bigger teams. They really do lack a true center outside of Nick Claxton, and he's only 6'10", 150 pounds, and he had some fouling issues last year. But I don't hate it. He's still a young kid, 22 years old. He has no three-pointer yet, 2 for 12 in his NBA career, and last season he only played 18 minutes a game. But his per 36 block numbers, they're legit. 2.4 blocks a game per 36 would have placed him third in the league. He's long, he's athletic, and he's young, something that's missing on this team. He's a great rim roller, a constant lob threat in the paint, and he has some AD point guard in him. He brought the ball up on the floor and ran the pick and roll as the ball handler in Georgia. Just saying. He's also a very versatile big. He switched 8.2 screens a game, way more than any other player did last season, and he only played 20 minutes a game last year. He only allowed 0.77 points per possession on switches. He's a great switch defender. He can even lock up Damian Lillard for stretches. He can guard 1 through 5 as a center. That'll work. Now, he did add 10 pounds in this offseason, which is good to hear. He needs to bulk up a little bit, and he can be their defensive anchor this season for such an offensively minded team. He's their only rim protector right now, unless you count Kevin Durant, and the Nets had a 102.1 defensive rating when he was out there playing at the 5. Now, this is going to be a contract year for Nicholas Claxton, and I look for him to ball out. Moving on to the center 3 position, and I didn't know who to put here. I'm putting LaMarcus Aldridge. They have Paul Millsap or Day'Ron Sharpe or James Johnson, but I think LaMarcus Aldridge has a little bit of everything that's going to earn him minutes because of his size, shooting, and overall experience. But LaMarcus Aldridge is back, ready to ring chase at age 36. You love to see it. Hopefully his heart is okay and he's going to be safe to play for the entirety of the season. Now, he's always struggled on defense, always had really awkward feet. He can still shoot that awkward mid-range fadeaway jump shot, however inefficient it is. Go ask Carmelo Anthony how teams feel about the mid-range fadeaway jump shot. But he's turned himself into a good three-point shooter these last 2 seasons, shot 39% last year. And he can be a pretty good post-up threat when they need a bucket. He can be scoring off the bench, a spark if KD and Harden aren't playing. His big issue is because of his age and overall lack of athleticism is that he's a mismatch versus anybody on the defensive end. You're going to have to treat him like Boban Marjanovic. When he comes in the game, he's a mismatch, feed him the ball, and hope that his offense can overcome the poor defense. Moving on to the bench ranking where they're going to come in at 5th. Starting with Bruce Brown, who's actually going to be the starter for Kyrie Irving until he comes back. But I love this kid. I love his effort. He does all the dirty work. Anybody would want him on their team. He's a great defender. He's strong. He plays hard. He dives after loose balls. He plays whatever position you want. And while he doesn't have the best foot speed, he's up there in competitive juice when he's guarding the perimeter. He does have awful touch around the rim. He has worked on his floater a little bit, so that is a tool in his pick and roll skill set. He's just an awful 30% career three-point shooter. He shot 29% last season, is actually regressing. And because of that, Steve Nash actually invented a brand new role for him. The little big, the point center, the guy who plays defense on the perimeter and then on the offense sets screens and rolls like a center on offense because he can't shoot the 3. It was so inspiring that Ty Lue adopted it for Terrence Mann. Now he is a little undersized right now, 6'4", and he doesn't have a defined role, but he's going to do a little bit of everything for you. Shoot the 3, set screens, attack the glass, defend the other team's best guard, jack of all trades, master of none, and a really poor 3-point shooter. Moving on to their draft pick at 27, Cam Thomas, and that was really nice value. I had him at 17th on my big board, but he did fall a little bit. As you've seen in the Summer League, he's going to be a good find for the Nets. He's not afraid to get buckets. He's going to be good scoring off the bench, a little bit like LaMarcus Aldridge. But before you hype him up, recognize his limitations. He's Lou Williams. He'll get you ISO, mid-range buckets, and shoot the 3 much below average. He's not an efficient scorer. He scored 23 points a game at LSU on 17 attempts a game, 40% from the field, 32.5% from 3. He's not very athletic. He's not a slasher. He's not a creator. And he's a below average defender in both skill and effort. He turned the ball over at LSU at a relatively high rate, 1.4 assists per game to 1.7 turnovers. He's going to have to lower his shot volume at some point because he's on a team with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and maybe Kyrie Irving. But he will come in for like 15 minutes a game and just get you buckets. One of the few non-big 3 players who can get their own shot on this team. And unlike Day'Ron Sharpe, I think Cam is going to get good minutes in this first season for him. When he's on the court, he will look like he's playing selfish. That's his strength. He's going to hold the ball, take bad shots, and make bad shots. My blurb for him is this kid is a scoring machine. He'll make the occasional drive and kick or nice pass, but his goal is to get you buckets. He has some great moves that will translate to the NBA, like a jab step mid-range shot, a fadeaway jumper, a step back, and more. He has a quick trigger from 3 and a clean free throw stroke. Unfortunately, he has a seriously low motor on D and can be a liability for lack of effort. He doesn't have zero physical tools, he has some strength to his frame, but he just sits in the corner avoiding to play defense, trying to save his energy for offense. He'll miss the occasional rotation and get beat by quicker guards with ease, but he's buckets. Moving on to their other free agent pickups, Paul Millsap, another veteran power forward that's going to play center for this team. He's a really good help defender, not a great three-point shooter, 34% last year, and he's the least likely of all the players they picked up to get any minutes. I don't think he offers you anything some of the other guys can't already give you, especially Blake Griffin. They're kind of similar players at this point in their career. You look at their rotation, they actually have 5 centers in Nick Claxton, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, Paul Millsap, and Day'Ron Sharpe. You can even considerably say 6 with James Johnson and 7 with KD. So are the Nets going to go big? Are they going to follow the new trend today while people try to copy the Milwaukee Bucks where they have 2 bigs on the floor instead of 1 or none? I don't really know. And Paul Millsap is also 36 years old this season. He belongs on the Lakers, but we'll see how many minutes he does get. Another old as fuck guy they have is James Johnson, 34 years old. He was signed to be the Giannis stopper. That's it, really. He's a versatile tweener in the NBA between a 3, a 4, and a 5, and a horrible shooter, 26% from 3, 59% free throw shooting. He can't score after you get 5 feet away from the basket, but he brings toughness, and if you look at the stats he has against Giannis, he's one of the best players you can put against Giannis to stop him. Moving on to their last free agent pickup, DeAndre Bembry, and he's one of the few wing players that they have on this team. They really invested in the 6'8", 6'9" power forward center position, and then the undersized shooters. I don't know why, but their depth at the wing position is basically him, Bruce Brown, and Cam Thomas. Now he's ranked in the 95th percentile in steal percentage relative to his position. Okay. He's an awful shooter, 26% from the three-point line. He has some decent ball handling, a good assist to usage ratio, although his turnovers are pretty high. He's a really good defender, gives you effort, and at least he's not 36 years old. Moving on to their other draft pick in the first round, Day'Ron Sharpe. Now this dude is a big kid. He's an energy guy, defensive presence, and while he is a nice rebounder, he's a much better offensive rebounder. He'll be able to steal you possessions. He was a sneaky good passer at UNC, and he had no real post-game beyond that. I'm a little unsure of the pick overall and more unsure of the Nets actually drafting him. He needs a lot of time to develop. Now I'm in on his talent in the abstract, but he doesn't contribute to win now. He might contribute to win in 3 years kind of talent, but he's a super raw prospect. I'm just not sure what he's going to be able to give you this season that's going to help this team. As for my blurb, I like watching Day'Ron Sharpe. He's very green, and he will need time to develop out of his baby deer awkward phase. At this point, he lacks coordination to give high fives to his teammates, let alone make buckets. But he is a high motor, he plays hard, and he runs the floor, and that's all you can ask of your big man. There was a play against Virginia Tech where his teammate got the ball stolen from him, and they had a one-on-one contested fast break. Day'Ron Sharpe was literally the only player from either team to run the court, and even though the possession resulted in a foul, he was trailing aggressively and cheered on his teammate. With an awkward handshake, of course. Offensively, he won't give you anything beyond putbacks and lobs. He's a mess in the post with zero finesse to his game. He has no touch, evidenced by his free throw percentage, and will likely never shoot well. He is a special passer, though, routinely making elite reads out of double teams. Defensively, he's an old school 5. He protects the rims, not with verticality, but by keeping his long arms up and effort alone. He has a decent lateral quickness for his size, but he will get eaten alive on switches. He's absolutely jacked, but struggles with leverage and can't impose his strength on smaller players and lean on bigs. He's just a big, strong, awkward kid. At 19, someone is going to draft this kid, coach him up, and in a few years have a good young center on their hands. Moving on to David Duke on their 2-way contract, and my favorite blurb I've read on him is a known anti-Semite who can play both guard positions. So inconsistent, flashes of brilliancy followed by dumbfounding decisions. Perhaps he played on ball too much. Good size and versatility should land him an opportunity. As for my notes on him, he played for a no-name Providence college for 3 years, so it's really tough to grade him. He was a combo guard, averaged 17, 6, and 5 on 39% three-point shooting, which was good, and then 39% two-point shooting, which is awful. He had a really high turnover rate, 3.2 a game. He doesn't have the best athletics. He's kind of a slow-moving kid, but he has decent size at 6'5". He was a lazy rebounder, had bad body language, had a low motor, didn't run the floor, and he shot really bad in the summer league. But then he also showed incredible hustle in the summer league, so who knows? He played good defense and he's depth at the wing position, something this team really needs. He has some talent in him, shooting, playmaking. He just needs time to develop and have a chip on his shoulder so he plays hard. I like how empowered he is despite his name. Some quotes were, "Someday I want people to look up David Duke and see my face. Someday I want this name to mean something else." And I really like this kid and I'm going to be rooting for him in the G League. Moving on to their other two-way contract, Kessler Edwards, a second-round pick from Pepperdine. We'll see if he can offer the Nets anything. He shot 38% from three his junior year, had steady improvement across the board in his 3 years of college ball. Good size, 6'8", 6'11" wingspan, a defender, a decent scorer. He's played okay for them. He's not going to be able to create his own shot ever, and he's a little bit slow, has this weird shot form, but he is 3-and-D potential. Moving on to the front office, where they're going to come in at 11th. And it's yet to be seen how good of a head coach Steve Nash is. By all reports, he's fine. He's a nice guy. We just don't know if he's good yet. His plays were basically give his best players the ball, play them a million minutes, and hope that they can win the game for you. The GM, Sean Marks, as well. So far, he's had the easiest job in the world. He built a mild playoff contender with D'Angelo Russell back in the day, and then Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant knocked on his door. Then he traded away everything for James Harden, and now every single vet without a ring is knocking on his door. Now, I am disappointed in some of the moves he's made, most notably letting Spencer Dinwiddie walk for like a few seconds and a trade exception that's yet to come to fruition. And I know it's a small nitpick, but Dinwiddie was their backup point guard until his injury. The current replacements were Mike James last year and now Javon Carter and Patty Mills. And because Kyrie Irving is saying go fuck, some of those little moves that Sean Marks didn't make or did make start to rear their ugly heads, most notably not having a backup ball handler. And it got a little worse this offseason, losing Spencer Dinwiddie as well as Jeff Green. But of course, it's the Nets, and of course, so many people are going to be knocking on their door. The owner, Joseph Tsai, I don't have any issues with him yet. There's been some things that came out. The CEO quit basically as soon as the team was bought, but no red flags that I can think of. Moving on to the season projections, where they're going to come in at 3-1 championship odds, 56.5 projected wins this season. And while I expect Kyrie to come back, even if he does, they have a big three injury-prone starters in their 30s. Kyrie Irving is 29, but he's also incredibly injury-prone. They're the second oldest team in the league, only behind those geriatric Lakers. The questions for this season are going to be Kyrie Irving, long-term player health, and defense, where they ranked 22nd last season. I'm thinking their best way to succeed is to first find a backup point guard, and while they're waiting to do that, stagger the James Harden, Kevin Durant minutes and have those guys run the quote-unquote point, load manage back-to-backs and play their guys in the low 30s in the regular season so that they can preserve them for the playoffs. And as for Kyrie Irving, I don't know, just fucking tie him down and shoot him up with the J&J vaccine so he only has to get it once. Who the hell knows what's going to happen to Kyrie Irving? But that's going to do it for these preseason power rankings for the 2021 upcoming NBA season. And I want to thank each and every one of you for watching one of these videos, for watching two of them or watching all of them. This has been a lot of work and a lot of fun going through every single roster, going through every single player, and hopefully we'll have one hell of a season this upcoming year, and we'll be able to do this again next season. As always, let me know what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one.